So welcome to Horse Illustrated's webinar series. This month, we're super grateful to be able to welcome Tamie Smith to the webinar. So Tamie, thank you for being here. As you all know, Tamie is one of the top eventing riders in the United States and across the world. And of course, is last year's winner of the 2023 Kentucky 3-day event, 5-star aboard Mai Baum, which was super exciting because she was the first American rider to win in 15 years at Kentucky. But she's got a lot of other titles to her name. She's a mother, grandmother. She holds a business degree. We're going to be touching on all of those things today. So how it works, I'll go ahead and run through some questions for Tamie on Horse Illustrated's behalf, and then we will kind of dive into more. And I'll open up. Are you guys able to hear me? I just saw somebody say that they cannot. So I just want to make sure you can hear me. Okay. Thank you. So what we'll do is, like I said, I'll run through those questions, and then at the end, we will open it up to a Q&A where you're able to submit your own questions at the end. So there should be a little Q&A button on your screen, and that's where you'll kind of type in your questions, and I'll moderate them from there. And if you think of them throughout the webinar, feel free to go ahead and submit them. Just know that we'll get to them later on towards the end. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with questions. So Tamie, the first question I have for you is, do you remember your first horse or pony?
Yes, I do. My first horse and pony was it was actually a thoroughbred off the track, if you can believe this. My parents had no clue what horses really were, and her name was Martha Money. Martha Money was her name,
Cute.
and it was who I first went to go do my riding lessons with, and my trainer promptly told my parents they were crazy. and then I got to ride the pony of my trainers to learn how to actually ride.
Very cool. That's such a cute name too. Love
I
that.
know it was. I wish I had her now, because she was bred unbelievable and was a full
Wow.
sibling to King, who was a dressage horse with Hildegardny.
Oh, wow.
So of course I didn't find this out until I was
Later.
much older, and I was like, wow, why can't I have that horse now?
Right? What are the odds? That's crazy. Um, so did you always know that it was eventing that you wanted to go, or were there ever any other disciplines that appealed to you?
Yeah, actually, I would say I didn't really know it was eventing. And my family had horses in our backyard, and I grew up with them in our backyard. I was cautiously, very cautious around them all the time, and pretty scared, honestly, to ride. But my mom started riding in a formal lessons when I was around 6 or 7 years old. And then I wanted to, kind of do what my mom was doing. And so then my trainer at the time basically said that she didn't take kids out of, that were younger than 8 years old. And so at that time I waited, and my mom said, well, if you can ride your horse that we just bought you, this crazy, I mean, she was like 17 hands.
Oh
I
my
was this
goodness.
little tiny peanut. If you can ride her around the block, then you can start taking lessons. So for whatever reason, I managed to do that. And I one time got taken off with across the field.
Of course.
And of course we didn't, I had a helmet, but I can't imagine it was of any kind of substance. And so, yeah, it was my trainer that brought me into eventing, because that's what her discipline was. She was a British Horse Society instructor, and also aspiring to be an upper level event rider. And so I always did eventing until I was older, and then I kind of branched off into pure dressage and pure show jumping.
Okay, that makes sense. When did you know that eventing is what you wanted to pursue as a career?
Yeah, I think after I did the dressage when I was a junior, and then in my early 20s, I focused more on the show jumping. And I just always had it in my heart. Going cross country, the camaraderie in the industry, the way everybody kind of was. I just really enjoyed that, that that relationship that I have, and had with people at shows. Um, and so I just always longed to be in back in eventing. And so as soon as I could, I did that. But I will say that going off and doing pure dressage and pure show jumping was very important for my growth as a rider and education as well. So, I've also encouraged, some of my students to focus on that. My daughter um, went and did pure dressage for 3 years. So I do think it's super important to be well-rounded in all avenues, since we do have to basically be a master in all three sports.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. And it makes sense that it would kind of help you hone those skills in each individual phase by focusing on one at a time. And I also think it's really cool that it was really the community and camaraderie of eventing, in addition, obviously, to the exciting aspects of the sport itself that really drew you to wanting to pursue that. I think that's really cool and speaks to the sport. So, my next question is obviously you just kind of mentioned your daughter, and you've been very open about being a mother and grandmother. And how has that kind of impacted your career, and how do you balance family and your equestrian career?
Yeah, I mean, obviously at the very beginning, I was quite a young mother. And so it wouldn't have, from the outside looking in, and also from my position, to me, it wasn't favorable to be, potentially pursuing a career as a professional in in anything, especially when I had my daughter. Women in any kind of high level and having children, that was very much a kind of a no-no, like
Mm.
if you were going to have kids, then that was the choice you were going to have to make. And so I'll say that, like, having my daughter so young was, I'm thankful for that. I think it helped me in so many aspects of my life, and keeping a very, I was forced to be very centered. I was forced to turn into an adult much quicker than most. Um, and it allowed me to have a perspective where in anything elite, even in corporate America, being a physician or whatever, anything that you're trying to be the best at, you get very myopic and almost laser focused, and you forget about kind of the importance of living every day. And so my daughter definitely helped me with keeping grounded, and understanding that reality is that, yeah, you have ups and downs and what have you, but there's still more to life than our careers and our and what we're trying to pursue. But
Mhm.
also having my husband, later on, he's always been very good at saying hello, like, we're here, and kind of pulling me back into, you know, that I don't get so, down that road where I'm just
Mhm.
so obsessed. Because I think that's part of what's helped my career and helped me become the rider that I am, is because I'm so obsessed with wanting to be better,
Mhm.
but then that also takes away from, you as a person. You get too caught up and you don't have a good balance. And I
Mm.
don't like to say work life balance, because I think anything that you do at an elite level needs to have some level of obsession to it,
Mhm.
to be very good. But this I feel like I almost had a leg up by having Kaylana so young. But also, now that I'm in the age that I am, when this is when our 40s and 50s is, like, when everybody gets good at riding, and now my children are, they're grown, and
Right.
I'm not, so my friends, you know, other peers that I have that are in their 40s that have young kids, they were kind of laughing at me when I was younger, but now I'm a little bit laughing at them because they're, they're sitting there going, "Oh my God, how are we going to do this?" And but I'm like, they do all say, we all do talk about how children have helped keep us grounded in a healthy way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is the tricky thing to balance in any path you take, but especially competing at such an elite level. You talk about it, it can't really be a work-life balance because your career kind of is your life, but you still have your family to take care of and all of that too. You mentioned your daughter pursued riding as well. Um, did your family kind of share a love for horses, or is it just her?
No, yeah, my parents just had horses as like trail horses
Mhm.
as kind of a hobby. They were just in our backyard, and um, as my mom started riding when I was so young, she only did riding lessons for a few years because we couldn't really afford to have both of us in riding. And so at that moment, my mom said, you have to. I was doing ballet and tap dance and kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do and playing soccer and doing all this stuff. So she basically was just like, you have to pick. And
Mm.
it's still very interesting to me that I picked horses because I was so timid and so scared of them. It might have had something to do with an off the track thoroughbred being my first horse. Maybe that was just my intuition that I knew I was in danger, but um just having this, big, powerful mare as my first horse, it was terrifying. But I was very timid. And so it's interesting to me that I picked that, route. And I rode with my trainer from the time I learned the posting trot until I was in my late 20s.
Oh,
I grew up riding in that program, and it was such a family time. But my parents were never really involved in the horses, or my brothers were not involved in the horses at all. It just, I kind of got the bug, and then ran with it.
yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that once it's a part of you, you just sometimes it just gets in your blood and you stick with it. So it
Yeah,
makes
I
sense.
say
And
that. Yeah, it's like in your blood or it's
hmm
not,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I just didn't know it was. So um but
yeah.
obviously every little girl pretty much wants a pony, so
Hmm.
I loved horses, and had little play figurines and briar horses and stuff. But once I started into it, it was I would say just a mental connection that you get with a horse. And
Yeah,
I think some people, I think all of us that are involved with horses really understand that it's not explainable.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. My next question for you is kind of diving into horses um, when it comes to finding one that's a successful athlete, kind of what do you look for in a horse? What are those qualities that stand out to you?
It's changed through the years, but
Hmm.
the first thing is their mind. I think how the horse mentally processes different scenarios and their intelligence is very important to me, for me personally, and how they process even for like a client, for an amateur client. Their mind is first and foremost to me the most important thing, and then all the other things kind of fall into place.
Yeah.
But how they mentally, you know, deal with just walking on the lead or seeing something they're not sure of, or and how their reactions are, to me, are the most important thing. And then um, from there, I'll look at their conformation, and and then their gait movement and kind of their talent, athletic ability. But that is, I say to people, I would rather have heart, a horse with heart, and desire. Those
Mhm.
are the two qualities that I would want more than anything else.
Yeah, because those are the things that they're not really going to change about the horse. It's just part of their nature, and the rest maybe or maybe not can be trained and things like that, but their
Right.
character and their mind is key to that horse's being. So that definitely makes sense. Um, so horses obviously gives us lots of ups and downs. It's part of being around them, of working with them. How do you kind of manage that and kind of manage expectations for a horse?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is not getting my expectations ahead of what the horse's ability is.
Mhm.
And so that for me has been helpful, because I think we tend to allow our own expectations and our own desires, to kind of overshadow what the horse is capable of. And so I think that's kind of always been part of me. I love horses. I love animals. And so for me, and I think I've had really good mentors throughout my career, like my veterinarian that has been a huge part of my career, Dr. Emily Sandler. She was my first vet from the very beginning of my professional career. And I think having just good horseman part of my life, that's always been instilled in me. And there was a part, there is a section though where the horses can be very intelligent, almost too intelligent. And they can be in a place where they kind of outsmart you. So some people have trouble having them do their career because they're too smart and they've outsmarted that person. So that was a little bit what my career was built on, was horses that had trouble doing whatever it was that um, that person had that horse do, and they weren't, like, refusing a fence or not being good enough on the flat or having a lot of rails in the show jumping. And I had worked with a natural horseman for 3 years and kind of learned how the horses thought. And I really focused on learning how they process information. And it's not anything like a person. And so I think that helped my career tremendously, but it also helped me learn how they process information, how they think. So then
Mhm.
I was able to kind of overcome their fears or challenges. And so, and I didn't have a big, you know, backing. I didn't, I was a single mom. My parents had divorced. They were busy living the life of their 20s. you know, they were off partying and doing their own thing while I was in my 20s. So I didn't really have any kind of real support. And so I had to take horses that other people were like, here, you can just have that, and then make something of them.
Yeah.
And so during that time, I think I learned, there are horses that are just smart and know how to outsmart you. And there are horses that actually don't want to do, um, is that still okay? Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Um, my, okay. And there are also horses that actually don't want to do the job.
Yeah.
And learning what that is, I think, is super important. I think we have to really understand how they think and then listen to them. And so yeah, I feel like you and if you don't know, then you find somebody who kind of does, because
Yeah.
I think that's one of the missing qualities and horsemanship in all of our industries, and in all horsemanship, is that there's not enough people who actually put that as as a paramount, you know, importance for horses, as how they think and process, and then being able to assess, having a good intuition to be able to assess that what they're doing is what they love to do.
Yeah. No, that's such an interesting perspective. And I think it's one of those things we have to remember that every horse is an individual. They're all different. And yeah, they might seem to have the talent or be bred that way, but they just maybe that's not the job for them, and it's just
Right.
something that we as humans have to accept sometimes. So I think that's
Yeah.
really an interesting perspective. But focusing on the ups, obviously we're all huge Mai Baum fans, and we're super excited at Kentucky last year. Can you kind of walk us through what it felt like and maybe that moment when you felt like you two really had a real shot at winning, and then obviously when you went clear, what that felt like in that moment.
Yeah. I knew with Lexus, kind of throughout our career that that horse had an exceptionalness about him. Like he he's always been such an incredible horse and athlete. I always hoped that, there would be his moment of a big win of something. And obviously, like, I visioned having him being at the Olympic Games and representing the country at an Olympics. That was kind of my dream for him. But I have to say that the win at Kentucky, people ask me, like, would have you rather gone to the Olympics than Kentucky? And I have to say that if I could trade it, I wouldn't trade it for the world, because I felt like what Kentucky did, was it was not it was almost, the victory was not my victory. It was everyone's victory. It was young mothers who, and abuse victims, and um, you know people who are trying to compete, you know at the highest level, that don't have the support and live on the wrong coast, and
Mhm.
just everything that, I mean, imaginable. Like, maybe someday I'll write a book, but, like, I had everything not going for me. I mean, I'm a single mom at 19. I'm, you know, got to support my child. I have no way of supporting my kid. I just, like, one thing after another. But it was like all of that, and battling with our federations about equal opportunity, and making sure that, we're working with organizers from all over the country, not just the West Coast, but, like, Central and even Northern East Coast, and just saying, like, the sport is our country, not just a section. And
Mhm.
um it was just such a it was such a elation after I jumped that last fence, because it was everyone. It wasn't, and it wasn't even specific. It was so much bigger than just my team and just the owners and Alex and myself. It was just such a victory for every single person that you can imagine feels like there's no chance for them to ever be able to do it. Um, and and even in all sports, it
Mhm.
was, to me, that was the Heisman Trophy winner. I just saw this video and I shared it. He came from a very impoverished area and he just won the Heisman Trophy. And he came up for his acceptance speech and he said, "This is for all those kids who who come home and maybe don't even have food on the table that night. That you can do it too." And that was what that meant for me. For all the, I mean, I was never in that, bad of a situation, but still, it was almost, the mountain was still as high. And so um I think that, as far as knowing when I had a chance to win, I felt like that horse always had a chance to win. Even at the Kentucky before, like, if I hadn't had that frangible pin, I would have won that year, and because I did jump clean in the show
Mhm.
jumping that year as well. um but after, I was going into Kentucky with a new mental focus and a new mindset of knowing that I had a strong chance of winning, but that I would have a very strong chance of being in the top 5 and potentially the highest placed American. And I think I went into the competition thinking, I'm going to do my 3 best phases that I possibly can, and where that lies me is where it lies me. And um And so after the dressage, I was I was really frustrated because I felt like, it's subjective and I would never want to be a judge. I could never be a I don't think I could ever be a judge. I've had my dressage trainers try to train me in judging another person. I'm like, and I'm way harder than she ever would be. So I know that the judging aspect is so difficult. But after my dressage test, I was very frustrated because I thought, well, now I have no chance because I'm behind Yasmin Ingham and Tom McEwen. And I knew that those two were going to end on their dressage score. So at that moment after the dressage, I thought, okay, well, the best I'm going to be able to do is third place, which isn't bad. I was like, okay, I guess I'm on the podium. I never in a million years thought after the cross country that I would be in the lead. And when I saw that Tom had time faults, I was obviously grateful for that. I was relieved that that happened. And then I was absolutely stunned and shocked that Yaz had the trouble that she had. And I was, at the end of the day, I was in the lead. But I've been working with my coach and mentor, Scotty Keach, for the last probably 6 or 7 years now. And I will say, like, in our training sessions that I train with him, he mentally prepared me for that. And I didn't know he did. I didn't know that he was doing that. But in my training sessions, he's always, putting pressure on me, like, okay, do that round. And, I make a mistake and he stops and he's like, okay, you have one more shot to do it or you're done. You're done for the day. And I'm
No
so
pressure.
training for doing these pressure training situations. And he was there with me. He'd walked the cross country with me, and he came up to me after the cross country and he said, so you're ready to be a spectator's winner tomorrow, or are you ready to be a horseman's winner? And I'm like, what kind of question is that? He's like, well, if you go in the arena and you ride like a Muppet and you still don't have a rail, you're just a spectator's winner. And I'm like, thanks, Scott. Thanks, buddy. But when he said that to me, I went, you know what? He's right. I'm going to go in and I'm going to ride well. And my horse is going to jump clean or he's not. And there's nothing that I can physically do to all I can do is ride very well and give him every opportunity to jump in the best shape he can. And sometimes we have a rail. But I think having that mentality and him training me that way let me go into the show jumping ring and just accept that what was going to be was going to be. And I just was like, please, universe, please let it be, please let it be that he has, that he jumps clean, because I couldn't have a rail, I didn't have a rail in hand. So, yeah, it was quite a roller coaster of emotions throughout that weekend. But I've worked with my mental focus coach, Natalie Hamill, over the last couple of years, and just learned how to, I think there's just such another aspect at this sport now that never was when I was growing up in it. You weren't allowed to have emotions. You weren't, if you had a sports psychologist, you were kind of crazy if you needed stuff like that. So I think it just collectively, over the years, it just prepared me to be able to have that happen. And I'm, forever grateful that, I've been able to learn how to deal with all of that, both from the training aspect, but from the mental aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. And the mental aspect is so much a part of it. And like you said, it's significant that the sport has evolved to kind of have that be such a significant part of the training, because if you don't have your head on your shoulders going into the ring, the physical is not going to be there, But going back to what you said about how special of a win it was and what it meant for everybody, I think that's so true. I just remember the atmosphere at Rolex Stadium that day. Obviously, for you to be the first American winner in 15 years was special, but for those who knew your story, It really was, like you said, a win for everyone is a great way to put it. And I think that's why it was just such a beloved win on behalf of, fans of the sport, or like you said, all those people who maybe haven't had things go their way and are fighting an uphill battle. It just proves that anyone can do it. So I do applaud you for that. And it really was uh, special. But so obviously, Lexus was a huge part of that. What can you kind of tell us about him and what has made him such a special horse?
I mean, really his personality. I mean, he is truly a athlete. I mean, he's an extraordinary athlete. He's drop dead gorgeous. He moves, beautifully. He jumps in perfect technique. And but his, if if you think about heart and desire, that horse has one of the biggest hearts. And what I'll say is that he's only 30% thoroughbred. He has, you know, I know that prior to him even doing his first 5-star, because I've had multiple people come to me and say, we never thought that horse would ever be able to do a 5-star. And he did 5 5 stars. So, and won one of them, so, and was in top 10 in all of his 5 stars that he ever did. So, the fact that is a testament to his heart. Um, that isn't necessarily to his athletic ability, because almost like his athletic ability got in the way of him potentially being a 5-star horse, because his technique was almost too exuberant and too correct. Almost like a cross country horse, you don't want to have them galloping, down to a jump and then, over jump a jump cross country over a foot and a half over the top, or not brush through, meter 50 brush, at badminton. But he continued to do that. But he also continued to fight hard when it was at 8 minutes on an 11 and a half and 12-minute course, and he kept wanting to go. I think that that's just a huge testament to his heart and his desire, because he absolutely loves cross country, even though he's an all around, beautiful horse in all 3 phases. Cross country is his favorite phase. And so it's yeah, I mean, just he's just the most genuine, sweet horse that you'd ever meet. I mean, he has every emotion. I mean, he really speaks to you. Like, when he's nervous, he shakes. There's like no question. When he's feeling what he's feeling, when he's and he always goes through this routine. I remember when he first started doing it, it was when he was at the top of the sport, and it was the first true championship that I'd done. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's shaking. That's horrible. Like, he hates this, but then I'd get on and he would be calm immediately. And then he would just be a competitor. He'd be in the warm up and really anxious. And then the second I went to go to the ring, he would just plunk in and know it was time to perform. And so I'm like, okay, he's just feeling what I feel,
Yeah.
like before I go out of the start box, before I knew how to cope with my emotions, I nearly wanted to throw up. It's like doing my first preliminary event. I remember going out of the start box and not even remember jumping the first 2 jumps. And then all of a sudden, being, coming back to life. So the way we cope, I think horses, I mean, he taught me that. He taught me how horses have all those same emotions. And, he really speaks to me and I can tell when whenever there's anything wrong, I know. And it's been, it's actually a really funny relationship with my veterinarians and myself, because they'll say, oh, well, we're dealing with this, or we're dealing with that. And I know when it's really whatever he's dealing with physically, if it's actually bothering him, because scientifically they'll say, this is what this looks like, or this is what that scan looks like, or this is how this looks like. And sometimes I've been like, or they'll say he looks absolutely fine. And I'm like, he's not fine. So, we have all this science with our veterinarians, but really Lexus has spoken to me, and I've pushed on when my vets have been like, I don't think you should. And I'm like, no, I know he's okay. And I backed off when they said, I think you're fine. So I think it's just our relationship with our horses are so important. Um, they're more important than anything that a vet could tell you. But then also you as a person has to have that intuition
Mhm.
and feel to know what you can, you know, and and not horses are will speak to you that way. Like Lexus tells me if he has a, if I mean he doesn't hide, he's not stoic. He will tell me if there's anything wrong with him ever. He has a hair out of line, he'll let me know. But there's some horses that are very stoic, and so you know that creates a more complicated situation. But I think it's a testament to why he's had such a long career as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about what you look for in a horse. It's their mind and their nature. And it's kind of clear from everything you've described about him why he's such a standout and why he has had the career that he's had. And obviously how in tune you guys are together. So that's really special.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to kind of dive into the different phases of eventing a bit and kind of what is on your mind each day. I know obviously what happens on dressage day is going to affect how you go in across country and so forth, but what is kind of your goal on each day, generally speaking?
I mean, every horse is different. I have some that I might pre-ride before a competition. Usually I do, but if or I might not pre-ride them. I might just throw them on a lunge line or take them for a long walk. Um, so my biggest focus is trying to create a most harmonious, aspect to my warm up and my in the ring competition. And so being able to do that, being able to create a horse that's, prepared the best way possible, it takes years to really develop a system and then understand what the right thing is. And then in addition to that, not let your own competitive nerves um or your impatience, I guess is a good word,
Mm.
get in the way of what you know is working or what works. And so, um, the as I've as I've developed my career, I've, had to learn what that is, what works for every horse. Some of them need to be hand walked and only hand walked, and then I get on them maybe 20 minutes before my test and I go in and do my test. Some of them, like with Lexus, I always needed to make sure that I didn't do too much, didn't train too hard, didn't wasn't drilling him, if that makes sense, because we get to the horse show and then we start, doing extended trot, and you see these, you watch the warm up. It's so interesting to me, and you watch the people who are, doing all these extended canners and back and collection and, extended trots and all these movements. And ultimately, by the time, you're at your competition, you're prepared to do what level you're doing. And so I think for me, it's always been important to prepare the horse the best for the ring starting, the days leading up to that first phase. And so, um, there's no real formula because every horse is
Mhm.
different. In fact, we have my groom and I have a notes page and we keep notes of every horse and what we do at every competition, and it's almost like a diary. So we know kind of, okay, that worked. That was my best preparation, or no, I needed more preparation, or I had too much preparation there. Maybe I needed to do, less walking, or maybe I needed to do more riding. And so I develop a plan for that horse for that phase. And the same goes with the other phases as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. It's kind of like we were talking about earlier of keeping in mind that every horse is an individual. So I think that totally makes sense to keep notes on each individual horse and what works for them and what doesn't, because what works for one horse may be the totally
Yeah.
wrong formula for the other. So I think that's some really, really cool insight. So obviously we talked about Kentucky and how much that meant to you. Going forward, are there any big goals that kind of stand out to you that you would like to pursue?
Yeah, I mean, I have a great group of up and coming horses coming up the ranks. And I have obviously my eyes set strongly on the 28 Olympics. They're going to be right across the street from
Mhm.
our farm, so that's exciting. But also it's, that's been my hope and dream, since the 84 Olympics. Watching it as a little girl on my living room floor going, what is that? How do I do that? So the Olympics are a huge goal of mine, but I also am really focused on getting back to badminton and running around badminton, and then doing Burley as well. I want to be at the highest level. I'd love to be a goal of mine to be to reach that world ranking number one, as Roz Cantor has done in the past. I think it's so inspirational. I don't love talking about the fact that, well, I don't feel like women have they're not, I don't feel like they're inferior in our sport. I don't feel like they don't have an ability to ride and equally against men. I feel like we have, you know, sometimes even more of a leg up because of our natural, just way about us. But at the very top of the sport, it's predominantly men. And you see this time and time again. So I think it's really important to be able to be an advocate and an ambassador for women at the very top of the sport. I think it's just, to me, it helps people say, yes, I can do it. Because at the top of the sport, I think it is predominantly male, because the top of the sport is hard. It's big, it's technical, it's from a physical aspect. Men have an advantage over us with their their ability to be stronger. And so, like, I mean, I would venture to guess that there's not been a man in eventing that's had to go to the gym twice a day to to make it around a cross country course, but I did, like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to have the strength that I need and the fitness to be able to do that. Um, and so I really have, my sights set on this next group of horses being, I mean, I was gratefully, have a couple of very supportive owners um, that I've been able to have great relationships with, that are in it for the long haul with me. And so, and they have the same, ideals and goals that I do. And so I feel like we collectively have this place where we really I want to be an example in the sport, and somebody that, kind of build my legacy on that. And that it, you don't have to accept that, there's predominantly men at the top of the sport that are dominating it, because I want them to see when I am on the entry list that they're a little bit worried. So just working on that, working on that aspect of being one of the best. So
Yeah.
um, I I think my next 4 to 6 years will be very much developed to, me and getting to the top of my game, but also, helping. I have a handful of up and coming riders that are aspiring to do the same thing. So that's been kind of another focus of mine.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great goal to have, and definitely an important thing to touch on is, and you see it in this younger generation. Us girls, we love horses. We love this sport, and it's important to have those role models and people that inspire you to kind of chase your dreams and show you that you can do it. So I think that's awesome. Kind of on that note, in what ways do you think eventing can continue to improve and grow as a sport?
Um, I, you know, I do compete in I compete in pure dressage and in the show jumping. And what I feel is so unique about our sport is the the level of hands-on involvement with the horses. And so I think that we have to keep developing that type of image, because it is, I mean, I don't know that every sport sees, that, I'm cleaning my own stalls at events and, you know, helping, do all the dirty work as well. I'm sweeping and raking the barn aisles and, picking up manure. Like, it's not just, I don't just show up and everything is done for me. I think that our sport is really helping with, teaching people work ethics and teaching people responsibility. And I think that we have to keep after that. But in eventing, so, there's a group of us that really want to make the sport safer. um, I mean, honestly, everybody wants to make the sport safer. There was just FEI um, an FEI webinar that we did. I mean, we were having to be on at like 3 in the morning. There was 5 of us from every country um, that were on this call with the FEI and talking about a specific rule that the FEI was thinking about bringing in. Everyone all over the world wants our sport to be the best, and they do, because as time has gone on, I've, like, whenever I've had an issue, like I had an unfortunate occurrence where my horse hit a jump and ended up having a fractured knee because of the her inability to be able to rate where the um the lip on the jump was.
Mhm.
And ultimately it had nothing to do, the jump was very insignificant, it was very safe, but just the edge of the jump, she couldn't, her depth perception or lack thereof couldn't help her decipher where it was, and so she hit it and ended up having to have surgery, and then ultimately it didn't go well, so she was euthanized, and it was a detrimental thing that happened. But I spent a strong, I spent a long period of time developing a video showing that these types of jumps affect horses and their depth perception. And the FEI and our national federation put forward a rule that all those jumps have to be retrofitted by the end of 2024.
Wow.
And so, um, you know, those are things that everyone is trying to figure out, how can we make this sport the safest possible. Now, I do think, we were just having this conversation, there's also going to be a study done. They're trying to get a study funded to analyze every horse, every rider, and then analyze if there's any kind of fall, because as everybody knows, this year we've had a couple of significant falls. I had one myself in May, and trying to figure out what are the mitigating circumstances on why
Mhm.
that happened, or is it just those things happen in when you ride horses. I was at a show jumping show last week or 2 weeks ago, and 2 people fell jumping a 1 foot jump. I've never seen that in eventing in my whole 30 years plus, competing in the sport. I've never seen 2 people have significant falls where they had to be dragged off in an ambulance, and the horse as well too. So when I do think that eventing has a higher exposure to our falls, more so than show jumping and dressage. Um, but I also feel like, um, that's good that we are so public and open and transparent. Um, and I think that, um, as far as the sport going, um, I think that, you know, collectively the group is, our industry is it just needs to keep being what it already is. I mean, we have such a broad base of volunteers, volunteers in our sport where you don't have that in the other sports. I mean, you do, but not to the aspects of what we have here. And so in this sport. And so um I just I I see a I see so many positive aspects of our sport that aren't I feel like that aren't recognized. I don't think the general public sees how truly wonderful, the community is, and how well, I mean, you should see the physio programs, that every one of my horses gets, every single day. Like, I mean, my groom, she's like, oh, they're getting lasered and magna waved, and they're going on a Vitaflor, and they're the ones that can't go up and down mountains, they go on an incline treadmill. I mean, it's such a science, and it's all hands on. It's not just you pull the horse out of the stall, you get on it, and you know the vet keeps injecting it, and in 2 years you get another horse. It's not like that. Our horses have the longest careers. I mean, Lexus has been at the advanced level for over 10 years now. So it's like, I think that those things need to be recognized so that people really see how good our sport really is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so important for the general public to know just how well these horses are cared for and how much goes into it, and um, how important they are to us. And I think that's kind of full circle that you talk about the eventing community, because that's kind of how at the beginning you talked about that's what drew you to the sport was the
Yep.
community, and that's exactly what's going to continue to help the sport to grow. So
But
that's really
yeah.
cool. Okay, so that's kind of the end of my question. So I'm going to open up the floor to the audience to submit some Q&A. So for everybody who's on here, there should be a Q&A button where you'll just type in a question and I'll be able to see it and moderate it, and I'll ask it out loud for Tamie. So if we can just take a few seconds to go ahead and submit a few, we'll kind of run through those. While we're waiting, Tamie, I had just a couple of like fun questions for you.
Yeah.
Do you have any like songs or things that kind of help you get into the right headspace on show day?
No, if you can believe that.
No, I mean,
um, I know I do meditate. I I I use this app called Calm, which
yeah.
is it's called Daily Calm, and I use that app to like if I'm feeling extra anxious and I need some sort of extra kind of focus, then I've used that Calm app. Um, and they also have they have a a section in there by LeBron James, who talks about like getting prepping for competition, or um, you know that type of stuff. And then also the girl that I work with has provided me with different types of meditations and routines that I do. But music, I there's a playlist in my phone that, when I don't want to hear a lot of people talking,
Yeah.
then I might put that in. And luckily for me, I've always been really hard of hearing. Um, so I don't actually hear a lot. But I have these really cool Bluetooth hearing aids. So I can just turn on my playlist,
Just get
and
you in the
nobody
zone.
knows that I'm listening to anything. And so, but for the most part, it's just mostly like a routine where if I feel a little outside myself, I know kind of this routine that I do to get me right back in, and I'm there in less than a minute.
Sure. Yeah, just like horses, I guess we need our routines to get in the zone too. So, okay, we do have some audience questions. So Grace wants to know if you could ride any famous sport horse in history, who would you choose?
Oh, wow, there's so many. So in eventing, it would have been Toledo de Cursor, who is Tom McEwen's big time 5-star horse. I
Mhm.
absolutely just jaw dropping. Um, in the dressage, um, ugh, I think, I mean, the horse that McLean Ward has now, I think his
Mm.
name is
Ilex, right?
Ilex.
Sorry, I'm
I
still
would
in
love,
Olympics
I
mode in
think,
my head.
no, that horse looked like, it looks like it could jump a barn. I think
Mhm.
that would be the one that currently at the moment that I would just absolutely love to ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Holly wants to know, you've kind of talked about some up and coming horses that you're excited about. If you're able to share so we can keep an eye out, are there any in particular that you're excited about?
Yeah, my one horse Keenan, he's now at the 4-star level, and I will plan on taking him to the 4 short at Kentucky next year, and I might be bringing my Baum to do the 4 short. I think it just depends on how he's feeling. Right now, he feels great, and I've been doing show jumping with him. I'm kind of aiming him more towards doing the small Grand Prix. Like, my goal with my Baum is maybe doing a 2-star FEI show jumping Grand Prix in the
Oh, cool.
spring, and then maybe coming to take bringing him with me to Kentucky. So Keenan is an up and coming, really just super horse. He's kind of been this, if I could explain him, he's like a Travis Kelsey. He's like this, big brute kind of uh party animal a little bit, and just needs maybe to mature. um but he's super sweet and such a trier, so I'm really excited about him. It's just getting him to be a little bit more mature. I have um a mare that I had and a gelding that I had at Maryland 3-star. Pierre is this French horse that I had, and his name is very long. Pierre's Fichard du Bouchard. He reminds me so much of Tom McEwen's horse. He's bred very similar to the Toledo de Cursor, and so that's why. And I wanted something that could do 5-star, that at 8 minutes I wouldn't be going into heart failure. So I'm really excited about him. His dressage is his weak link, but the jumping and the cross country is unbelievable. So I'm super excited about him. And then my mare that I have, her name is Tina Turner, which
Great.
she is a kind of a dark chestnut mare, little and very unassuming, but just so much quality, and in all 3 phases, just a she's going to be a force, I think. Very, very much just, she reminds me of myself, gritty, and just needs to learn how to just chill out a little bit and accept her. But she is such a phenomenal galloper and jumper, and very good mover, and very good competitor in the dressage. She would have won actually Maryland, and I had a technical out on the cross country. I jumped to jump, and I wanted to turn, and she pecked on the landing, and we overshot our turn, so I had a circle. But she's gonna really be really exciting. And some younger, I have a mare that won the 3-star at Galway. Her name is Lele, and she would be, I think, personality wise, most like Lexus. Very tries so hard, and just such a treat to work with every day. She's just the sweetest, kindest animal. And so there's, a handful that I'm really excited about, and then a couple that are younger. Karina, who we found, and looks like my mare, Salnaguere, California. She literally is the spitting image of her,
Mm.
and I was introduced to her because of that. And then
Oh,
my cantata mare, Salinaguere cantata. So that's the string, that's the group, that I have like some serious high hopes for. They're all very good movers, very good jumpers, and very good gallopers. So I'm really excited about all of them.
yeah, that sounds
Mostly
like a
mares.
Hey, girl power, right? Ansley's question is, what do you think is an important foundation or good reminder when learning to compete in this sport? So if you're aspiring eventer.
Yeah, I think this took me a long time to learn, but as long as I am always doing what I feel is right for the horse, it I feel like it's very hard, especially with me being in California because I'm out of the mix. And
Hmm.
that's very difficult to kind of watch my peers competing, head to head and at these big competitions like that Grand Prix eventing showcase in Aiken. It's like I have to put my a choke chain on myself and be like, but is that the right development for your horse? Because I want to be there and I want to compete amongst them. But the second that I actually got this advice from Derek DeGrazia way back in the day. I hadn't even gone advanced, I don't think yet. And he said, the slow way is the fast way, and never compromise what you're doing competition wise because of a team. So, you so often we get into a place where you're like, okay, I want to have my horses set up for this next team competition. And so you might push the envelope a little bit because you think that, you got to get there. But I feel like you want to get there as slow as possible so that when it's time to deliver, you're you're ready to you're ready to fire. And I feel like it's hard. I think to sum that up is you have to kind of keep blinders on and and just keep your focus on what's best for your horse.
Yeah, for sure. Liz asked, you talked about your horse's fitness plans, but what do you feel to be the most important part of your own personal fitness plans to be able to compete at the top levels?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm fully like I'll start going back to the gym probably in the next couple weeks after Christmas. But I go to the gym or do some sort of workout plan if I run up my gallop or I'm doing that 3 to 4 days a week. As I get closer to a 5 star, I would say obviously every level is different and you're just like in horses, they don't have to be as fit to run around a novice training, beginner novice. They don't have to be as fit to do that as they have to as at prelim, and they don't have to be as fit
Mm.
as they have to do it as a 5 star. And so I basically formulate my fitness plan to the levels that I'm competing. And right now I'm trying to be at 5 star level as much as possible. And so that's my level of fitness. And I will say that I feel like there's a place of being too strong. I think there's an important piece of making sure that you're cardiovascularly strong and that you physically have a very good core strength, but that you don't then become too strong, because that is also, I mean, that's been one of my things that I've had to develop throughout my riding, is not to ride too strong.
Sure. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Jenny's question is, what's your go-to training movement to help a tense horse relax?
Transitions. So if I'm already on my horse and I'm feeling that lot, all that tension, I'm trying to create as least pressure as possible. And I really refer to the German training scale as I'm starting every ride every day. And I just go up and down that scale because as I lose harmony or as I lose like my relaxation, I might have to, go back down to that again. But the transitions, walking and trotting and cantering and doing a million transitions, I think is the simplest way to get a horse to where they finally just let go, and patting them, like not hitting them when you pat them, but rubbing their neck. Like,
Mhm.
to me, I've never found, unless I've been on a 3-year-old where they were they were scared that something was touching them. I've never found a patting not work in a relaxation mode. And so or even talking to them. I think that they really, it's a soothing technique, and it really helps. I'm not a big talker. I don't talk to them a lot, like when I'm going along, but if I find that rubbing their neck or saying good boy, good girl, works, then it's all about doing that, and and not going to the next step. Like
Hmm.
maybe you have a horse that's super tense, and you have to, maybe not have it, you're only working on light contact instead of over flexion. Like sometimes I feel like people pick up the reins and they're immediately, making them round, and they're doing it from front to back, and that immediately creates, tension. So
Yeah.
kind of assessing how and why your horses are tense, even you know, making their world very small in a moment that they're tense, going on a circle and not coming off of that circle, so that, so often I find that riders, when the horses are tense, are kind of trotting and cantering kind of all over the place. And that actually creates an insecurity. They
Yeah.
want to be kind of in a small space. So that helps
Yeah,
as well.
that makes sense. It's kind of like what you were talking about earlier about we need to understand they're in a horse's brain, not a human's brain, and we have to treat them as such.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Grace asked, if you could compete at the top level in any other sport, equine or otherwise, what would you pursue?
I, I think I'd pursue both the show jumping and the dressage. I mean, I'm really, um, I've I've always been a fan of both, and I I'm really enjoying doing the bigger jumping with Mai Baum right now. I did a welcome speed class at Thermal a couple weeks ago, and I was walking the course, and I'm like, can my horse jump this big? But I found as I went and did that a couple times, I really enjoyed, and I watched the million that weekend, and I thought, wow, I could really get behind this. But I also really enjoy the dressage and love the precision of that. Um, and I mean, I've already ridden horses that have already been trained to Grand Prix, and trained several of my horses up through Prix St. George and Intermediaire. So I really love those two sports. I also love the the reining cow stuff.
Mhm.
It's almost like dressage with Western. I've really enjoyed that too. So I think just anything at high level is really intriguing to me.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about the horse industry is there's so many different disciplines that you could pursue and still work with these amazing animals. So
Yeah.
absolutely. Our last question, I think, really kind of sums up the theme of what we've talked about pretty well. It's from Madison. What would be your advice for adult amateurs who want to progress in equestrian sport, but maybe they have young families or work full-time jobs outside of horses?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, that was me in my 20s. So I think that having a very good support system is key. I mean, I brought my daughter with me everywhere I went, and I mean, strapped her in that stroller, and didn't when she was younger, and everybody at the barn helped me. It was such a great community. They all helped me, you know, ride. I mean, I was working full time, going to school, and then driving out to the barn and riding under lights. And so I think really, I mean, it's a lot. It's a
Mhm.
lot, and it requires maybe you to be half insane to have the desire to do that. But as everybody knows, once you get, I remember thinking, gosh, I'm getting up at 5 in the morning, I'm taking Kaylana to daycare, I'm driving to work, I'm working all day, I'm picking her up, and then I'm driving out to the barn on the day that I didn't have school that day. But then once I got there, it was just like ultimate peace and harmony
Mhm.
for me and my mental health. And so it was worth the effort. But there's I think people, and this happened to me actually when my husband and I got married. There were people that were like, well, you shouldn't be riding and you should be at home and be a mother and a wife. And I could have easily got wrapped up into the guilt of pursuing my own career and dreams, and people thinking that I didn't have a place to do that. But to me, I've always looked at it as I'm an example to my kids to pursue their own career and their own dreams and never to, let go of that. And so I just never let it, affect the guilt never affected me. Um, the desire I always had. And yes, there were times where I mean, there's no chance. I had just this unrealistic thought process that that this was okay and that I did it, and I'm grateful that I was that way, that I had that personality, because I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't. But I would say that finding your barn family, everybody. I mean, even now we have um Kennedy's here at the barn today. She's 4 years old and she's running around with her little pony, and we're still working and everybody's doing, but we're all kind of, playing a part in her and making sure she doesn't get ran over. She's not walking behind a horse or so. I know it's hard. But but the I feel like the reward that you get with horses is worth every bit of the difficulty in navigating that through having children
Yeah, absolutely.
and working full time.
Yep. Well, I think that sums everything up. So Tammy, thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed it, and I think everybody
Absolutely.
here did too. And we can't wait to continue to see what you do, and we'll be supporting you along the way. So thank you, and thank you everybody who attended. So, and
Yeah,
happy
thanks for having me.
holidays. Yeah.
Okay, you too. Bye bye.
Bye.